Hello and welcome to our NCAA Tournament predictions. Today's video, number 11 Xavier playing number 11 Texas in Dayton. You can catch this 8:10 Central, a matchup of two interesting teams. Texas was a questionable addition to the NCAA tournament. I mean, not in our minds. We know the talent that they've got. We know the superstar power with Trey Johnson. Xavier also playing very well down the stretch, guys. I think this will be a fascinating first four game in Dayton.
Yep, as the line came out, it's been bouncing back between 2 and 3. I think it got out to 3.5 for a little bit, but not by much. I'm seeing either 3 flat or 2.5 point favorite for Xavier, depending on what book you're looking at. A 1 basket favorite for the Musketeers here, Blake.
Yeah, and I think with Texas, again, we're an SEC channel. There will be Xavier fans here. We're telling you what we've seen with Texas to start with, and it's a team that I think, you look at it from the standpoint of it feels like they played a lot of close games. And, it's one of those where I feel like the wins were close and the losses sometimes were not so close at times with them. But I don't know. They've been a hard team to figure out this year. And we know they have Trey Johnson. We know he's going to be the focus of this entire thing. But I actually think this game comes down to everyone not named Trey Johnson. And specifically, I think this game is going to come down to the one and only Tremont Mark, because I feel like he has kind of been that guy. We've seen him over the past 5 games as Texas made this run to get into the tournament. 24 points against Mississippi State, 12 against Oklahoma, 19 against Vanderbilt, 15 against A&M, had 8 in the SEC tournament loss to Tennessee. But, I mean, let's call it what it is. I think they've just, in the games where he's had, really good games, I mean, they fared pretty well. And so I think he is certainly the key here when I look at just the way things start. Like we said, there's nothing we're going to say about Trey Johnson that most people don't already know. If you've seen him play, you know how good he is. But I do think that Tremont Mark is one of the biggest sort of keys here, because they got to get a good game out of him, I think, if they're going to win this one.
Yeah, let me give you a quick introduction to the Xavier roster, and then we'll talk about them. Zach Fremantle, their center, 6'9", the number 2 player on Evan Mia this year, once had a triple-double. Ryan Conwell, shooting guard, 42% on his threes, 83% on free throws. Damon McKnight, 2.7 assists to turnover ratio. Second year at Xavier, third 3 years at Western Kentucky, where he was all-league before that. By the way, that's going to be a common theme with Xavier. Very, very old. I think the second oldest team in the tournament beyond Kansas. Dante Maddox, leading scorer at Toledo before coming to Xavier. Marcus Foster was on the Furman team that beat Virginia. Dalen Swain, their most versatile guy. And John Hewley, the fourth, who played at Pitt in Oklahoma. Guys, this is an old team. Texas got plenty of experience, though, too. You talked about Tremont Mark. We got Kaluma. We got Pope. With a lot of guys there, too, for Texas. I think having 2 old teams here is going to be an interesting dynamic. Max, I'll start with you. What stands out about Xavier that could be problematic or maybe a deciding factor in this game against Texas?
2 things. Well, and they both got to do with shooting the ball. 3-point shooting, free throw shooting. That are 2 things there that Xavier's going to have a big advantage on. If you guys haven't seen Ryan Conwell, he absolutely rips the net. I'm talking every time the ball leaves his hands, you think it's going in. He's one of the best shooters in the country. I would say like top 3, top 5 shooters in the country, Ryan Conwell. And then Xavier, number 1 in the Big East, in Big East play, in free throw rate. Texas, 16th in the SEC in defensive free throw rate. Xavier gets to the line a ton. Texas puts people on the line a ton. So those 2 things. I think Xavier's going to be able to get to the line when they want. And, man, they were, I think, 38% in Big East play from 3, just about 40%. They are a dang good offensive team. They are. I've watched the Big East tournament highlights. I've caught a few games of Xavier this year, and every time I watch them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this offense is impressive. They've got some guys that can make tough buckets. Xavier fans, if you're unfamiliar with Texas, we have coined them Tough 2 Texas here. The great equalizer in March is guard play, and man, these 2 teams have guards that can make tough contested shots. Both of them do.
Well, I think if you're picking, to me, the team that's playing the best right now, yes, Texas is playing well, but I don't think there's any doubt that Xavier is playing as well as anybody out there, maybe just based on the way they finished the season. Even the Big East tournament loss, which by the way, you're going to hear this a lot in these videos. I'm not necessarily putting a lot of stock in these conference tournament results, especially ones like this where you have a team lose by 2 points to Marquette, who's a 7 seed. So I think if you look at what they've done the past month, to me, like that's the most glaring thing because I think the inconsistency for Texas is what has stood out with us this year. How many times we looked up and said, all right, Texas is turning a corner, and they come back out and lose a game that you're like, well, they lost to 15 at South Carolina or whatever it was. And it's just like, I think to me, and then they come look like they did in Nashville in the SEC tournament. So if I'm finding other intangibles here, I feel like at least right now, Xavier's been more consistent. And I wonder, kind of how that plays into things because also, too, hey, you've been consistent and then you're off a week and then you're coming out getting ready for the NCAA tournament game. And so how does that impact things? So I think things like that are always something I look at, too, this time of year.
Yeah, well, another angle that I want to touch on with Xavier shooting the ball, they don't offensive rebound if they miss. They don't miss often, but if it is an off night, neutral floor, first four, jitters, big time game, whole nation's watching. If Xavier does not shoot the ball well, I think Texas is in a very good position to clean up all those misses, and Xavier would be in a bit of a tough spot there. I just want to get that in real quick.
Yeah. One more thing. Let's touch on Texas. We know the talent that team has. Trey Johnson is maybe a top 5 NBA pick. Has just an unbelievable ability to get space and get a shot off. They've got Arthur Kaluma's had big games for them. Teron Mark has had big games a lot of different places. Was maybe not healthy the entire season at points, which certainly hurt Texas. Where do you guys see Texas maybe have an edge in this game? Trey Johnson's the easy one. I think Blake maybe touched on it early with Tremont Mark, but anything else that stands out before we go to picks here in a minute?
Yeah, I think defensively, when you look at Xavier defensively, I don't think they're going to do a ton to turn Texas over. You have Texas, a top 20 team, and an offensive turnover rate. They do a great job at taking care of the ball. They don't always take the most efficient shot or the best shot. So a lot of with Johnson, Kaluma, Tremont Mark, a lot of tough shot makers, but they don't turn it over. So you get the feeling from Texas, they're going to be able to get the shots off, right? The Trey Johnson threes, the Tremont Mark, tough twos, Kaluma. They're not going to be forced into a game like we just saw against Tennessee, where it just completely pushes them out of everything that they want to do. And you're down to 5 seconds in the shot clock more often than not. I feel like Texas is going to be able to get to the spots they want to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, with Texas, like just they're a pretty physical team, and I think we're going to say that about a lot of SEC teams. Kind of wondering how it plays out, especially in these kind of games. Where again, and they also foul a bit, and I think these are things too that we go into it when we talk about SEC teams. We always say, is this going to hurt them? Is it going to help them? How does that play out? I think that's something to watch here too. Because Xavier does get to the free throw line, and so. I think, yeah, there's some interesting angles here from the Texas standpoint. I mean, they're talented, and that's why, I think most people expect them to have a better season than they did and be a little more consistent, but they didn't quite reach that level. But here they are. It's a chance to start fresh. But, yeah, I just want to see defensively how they're able to match up against the Xavier team. Like you said, we know they can shoot it, but I think keeping them off the free throw line is just as important here.
All right, let's get to picks and why, starting with you, Max Barr.
Yeah, when you look at Texas's numbers here, they're a little bit skewed because there was no Kendall Weaver for pretty much the whole season. He's been back, and he's kind of jolted them in a kind of a utility guy way. Does a little bit of everything. He's all over the place, stuff in the stat sheet, doing all the little things. However, we haven't mentioned yet that this is in Dayton, which is only an hour from Xavier. So this is basically call it a home game for Xavier, given the distance, the differences in distance traveled. And then another stat that's pretty interesting is Xavier has won at least one game in March Madness in each of their last 5 appearances. Xavier is a nice team to pick in March. I like their coaching. I'm going to go Xavier here to win.
Yeah, I look at a few things here. By the way, the predictive model I've got, I put together just between Ken Palm, Evan Mia, Bart Torvik, nothing fancy, but it's got Xavier's a 1-point favorite. So no outcome here surprises me. But I think Xavier may be getting healthier in the way it played down the stretch. And I know we saw flashes with Texas where it was really good at times. And we've said Texas could be an Elite Eight team. Still think that could happen. And the Weaver point, Max, a good one. Like, he was the glue and energy guy they needed that they haven't had. He doesn't stand out, but when you watch him, he brings them something they needed. But I think a couple things, and I know it's not apples to apples, but I looked at conference play on Ken Palm because Texas had an easy out-of-conference schedule. And the Texas profile, guys, has got a lot more red in it, which is bad, especially the free throw thing that you guys mentioned, which matches up awfully poorly with what Xavier does well. That, and I think finally, coaching. And I don't mean this as a shot at Rodney Terry, but Miller's just won so many games and been such a good coach for so long. I think that's a big factor. I'm going to take Xavier because just some things in the matchup and maybe a coaching edge there.
Texas 324th nationally in fouls per game. Xavier can make threes at a very good rate. I think that combination is a problem, so I'm going Xavier.
All right, those are our picks. We'll be back for more every SEC game.
But before we finish up Bracket Bids, be sure to check them out. Enter that free pick'em contest. Start that auction draft league with your friends, family, or coworkers. Check out Bracket Bids here. You got a couple days. Get in on the action. Start that league. Again, you can choose from the multiple scoring models. You can track everything. Watch the standings shift in real time. The further your teams advance, the higher you climb the standings. For league play, use our promo code SE16. 40% off SE16. 40% off. Download the Bracket Bids app today or visit them at bracketbids.com.
All right, we're picking every SEC game in the NCAA tournament. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Thanks for watching. For Max Barr and Blake Lovell, God bless you. We'll see you again soon with more content here at Southeastern 16.